you all for being here in a talk that is not about psychedelics specifically. But I'm going to talk about a VR experience that can induce a state, an ordinary state of consciousness. So I'm a neuroscientist, and my field of research is meditation. So focusing on meditation, I'm of course interested on consciousness and non-ordinary state of consciousness, but also psychedelics. And now I'm working in a virtual reality lab, trying to combine VR with meditation interventions. And with my colleagues, at some point, we saw this, we saw this article in a Spanish newspaper saying that VR can approach a psychedelic experience of acid and mushrooms. And it was like, wow, this is really interesting, and I need to try it. So we went to Santiago, which is this, where is this lab based, and to visit this lab, and we try this experience that is called Ripple. And for me, personally, was at that point the most beautiful experience that I ever had in my life. So it was really, really powerful. And then we decided as a psychologist to do research with this VR environment. And talking about more generally about non-ordinary state of consciousness, we can define it as experience that arises spontaneously or can also be induced by certain practices, or and have of course a considerable cultural and eudaimonic significance, and can be induced by, for example, meditation practice or psychedelic use, or maybe also can be induced by VR. But the phenomenology of the experience induced by different pathways, of course, is different, but still there are many common mechanisms. So I'm going to talk more about meditation because it's the main field of research, and also because it's what we do in this VR experience. It's finally a meditation practice. So meditation practice aims at familiarizing ourselves with the experience, but also stabilizing the mind and cultivate positive human qualities such as compassion. And we have different broad families of contemplative practices, including the attentional family, where you focus on one particular object. Also the constructive family, where you try to generate a different and new state of mind, for example, of love and compassion. And also the deconstructive family, where you deconstruct the notion or the identification with the self. And in compassion can be defined in many different ways, but we have a cognitive, affective, and behavioral process of relating with the suffering in a different way. So we first recognize the suffering that can be of other or ourselves. We feel empathy for the suffering, for example, of the other. We tolerate the uncomfortable feelings in response to the suffering. But most importantly, we cultivate the motivation to alleviate that suffering, or actually we act to alleviate that suffering. And one particularly interesting compassion meditation practice is Tonglen. Tonglen is very interesting from both the Buddhism tradition, but also the science, because it's a practice from Tibetan Buddhism that means giving and receiving. So what you give and receive, you take the suffering of other person that you visualize as a dark cloud that you use your breath to inhale it, transform it internally, and with the exhalation, you give them alleviation of the suffering. So it's a constant cycle of taking and giving. And as you can imagine, if you never practice this Tonglen meditation, you need high mental imagery skills to do it, because you need to visualize the other person, visualize the cloud, take it with the inhalation, give the alleviation as a clear or white cloud. So it's quite complex practice. And Sorry, there is a picture. So as also Carl says, when we imagine something, the brain acts as is real. So if we, for example, are perceiving an apple, there are certain areas of the brain that are activated. And if we imagine the apple, it's more or less the same areas that are activated. So that's the base of compassion meditation practices. All the time when you imagine something, the brain acts as if it's happening. But for some people, it's very complex or maybe impossible to imagine something because of low mental imagery skills. And this is where VR can be an interesting tool to support compassion meditation practice, for example. And in our lab, we have shown that a single VR experience, that is actually the one that you showed, to be another lab, the machine to be another. So we swap the bodies, and we have shown that only that single experience doubles the adherence to meditation practice. So it can be quite powerful, the results. And we know more or less the mechanism of meditation. We know that impacts the attentional regulation, the emotional regulation, also the body awareness, but also more importantly, and this is shared, for example, with psychedelics and other practices, the change in the perspective of the self. So it's a detachment of the identification of a static idea of the self. And the sense of self in generally non-altered or non-ordinary state of consciousness, we can see that, for example, in psychedelics and in meditation, both states can induce a self-loss with probably different phenomenology, yes, but also many things in common. And this sense of self that can be deconstructed, or this ego-dissolution, is associated with a sense of unity or oneness, and also is a central feature of mystical experiences or non-dual experiences. So considering all this, and that VR has been used to embody experiences that we cannot embody in other ways, for example, switch your body or swap your body with another person. I think one of the main questions that we are thinking now is, can we use VR to induce a non-ordinary state of consciousness? If so, can VR be considered like a laboratory to investigate these states and the mechanisms by which can be induced, but in a more controlled way? So as I told you before, there are different pathways to induce different states of consciousness. And psychedelics, of course, are an important one, but also meditation and also VR technology. And we don't know yet exactly what are the mechanisms through which these pathways act. We know, for example, mystical experience is important, ego-dissolution, non-duality, boundlessness, but still we need to do a lot of research here. And to distinguish the technologies like VR to, for example, psychedelics, David Glowacki, which is the creator of this environment, VR environment, he coined the term pneumadelic, yeah, which means the spirit manifesting or spirit revealing. And they developed with his team different pneumadelic experiences. One, for example, is isness, that he presented here, I think, in the last Breaking Convention. And isness is a collective experience that blurs the conventional boundaries between self and the other. And several research shown that isness can induce mystical experience and ego-dissolution in a comparable way than psychedelics. Of course, it's not the same, but just the results are showing that it's comparable. And also increase the interconnection with the other participant of this experience because it's a collective experience. So basically, you can do it in the same room, and this is the co-located setting where all the participants are in the same physical space, but you also can do it remotely, and this is called the distributed setting. So if you have the Oculus Quest 2 headsets and good internet connection, you can do it from wherever part of the world. And from easiness, which is more focused on body boundaries dissolution, then Anuma, which is a company that creates these nomadelic experiences, they develop a different one, which is called Ripple. And Ripple is a combination of different elements because it includes the constructive and deconstructive family of meditations I told you. It has a big compassion element, but also the dissolution is there and the ego attenuation. The interconnection, I think, is the most important element in the design of Ripple. What the meditation that is practiced is Tonglen, the one I told you before, but in an embodied way. So you use a movement to coordinate the giving and receiving with your breathing. And in Ripple also, you can have coalescence, which is a new class of embodied experience where the bodies of all the participants can merge. So you can include the other in your own self-representation. And it's a 45-minute experiences. It has 3 phases. So a preparation, the meditation itself, and the integration. And here is a video So there you have 4 participants. This is what you see inside Ripple. I think probably you cannot see it very well. Can you turn off the light? So there you have 4 different participants. 2 are in blue color, 2 in orange. And this is the representation of the body. It's like the energetic essence of the body. So that's how you see yourself inside Ripple. And you have a light in your heart that moves with this Tonglen movement of giving and receiving. So here you are giving and receiving your heart light and giving it to the circle of the others. So this is just an example of what you see inside Ripple. Thanks. So what we did in our lab is a brief pilot study in Spain. So we had 16 participants, all from Spain. They had the experience. We had 5 men and 11 women, 11 participants with previous meditation experience, and 4 participants with previous psychedelic experience. And what we did is just gave them some questionnaires to be completed before the experience and after, and 1 week after to assess the integration during the week. So we use different kind of scales and questionnaires. Probably one that you don't know are the pictographic scales that we developed in our lab to assess complex meditation states where participants cannot describe the experience by using words. So we developed some pictographic scales I will show you now. And also we use the mystical experience questionnaires, the non-dual state, the adverse effect, and also we measure positive and negative affect. So the results, what we first see is that the participant increase in the interconnection with others. So this is pre-post using the inclusion of others scale. I think this is the name. This is a very commonly used scale to assess interconnection with the others, in this case with the other participants in Ripple. So we can see here an increase of 1.8 in this scale that was significant before and after the experience. Also, this is one of the pictographic scales. You can see it here down. So this is to evaluate the fusion with the partner in Ripple. So you have a part where you do an exercise with one person, with one partner. So this is to assess how interconnected they feel, particularly with the partner. And we can see here that most of the participants respond that the interconnection or the fusion with the partner was quite high, considering that more to the right is the highest fusion, right? And about the body boundaries dissolution, the participant says that the experience induced dissolution of the body boundaries. So the responses here are more in the left side of the scale, which means that the body boundaries are dissolved. So the left one is totally dissolved, the right one is totally solid. Also, the ego attenuation or ego diminishing, we can observe it here, where the participant show or say that the sense of the ego was decreased. And also in the self-referential dialogue, so this is in Spanish, but yo means me. So how much you feel you were during the experience thinking about yourself or your life. And we can see here that the participants decrease the self-referential dialogue. And also the percentage of time in these self-referential thoughts was quite low compared to, for example, other meditation practices. About the perception of the self in the space, so how do you feel the self was expanded, for example, outside your physical body? Most of the participants feel the self within the abdomen or the heart area, but also quite a large part of the sample say that the self was expanded outside the physical body. And about the mystical experience questionnaires, we measure the 4 factors. We have quite high scores, particularly in the mystical factor, measuring the unitive experience and the noetic quality. And also if we compare it with another studies using the methodology that these authors developed. So we can see here that Ripple, which is the red line, is comparable in terms of just the scores in this scale, of course, as a psilocybin experience with 20 or 30 milligrams. And about the scores, what we found is that the author says that a complete mystical type of experience is when each of the factor scores are more than 60% of the maximum. This is what we found in Ripple. This is what was quite surprising for us, but it needs to be, of course, we need to do more research with this. This is just a pilot study. And about the responses to the experience, participants say with high score that it was highly therapeutical, they want to repeat, they think that improved the knowledge about non-ordinary state of consciousness, it was helpful for meditation practice and improved the self-knowledge. About the adverse experiences, the highest score, which is still quite low, was the pain or discomfort because the headsets were not so comfortable. But we also have some scores on anxiety, body disconnection, for example, fear, which are quite low compared to the other scales. About the more hedonic experiences, we found higher scores on awe, relaxation, and other things related to the other participants, like shared joy, desire for connection with the other, the love and compassion that can be felt for the other participant, the desire to alleviate the other suffering, and the empathy. And also we use this scale, which is similar to the PANAS, positive and negative affect scale, but here we also include the arousal. So we can have, for example, a high, a positive affect with high arousal or with low arousal. So high arousal can be, for example, excited and happy, and low arousal can be relaxed, peaceful, and calm. And what we saw here is that we find a significant change pre-post experience, particularly in the positive affect, but with low arousal, so calm, relaxed, peaceful, and also in the warm and affiliative affects, so connected, feeling secure, things like that. And finally, we use this scale, which is really good to assess non-dual states, and it has 3 factors: unity, affective bliss, and ego-dissolution. And we found again here quite high scores in this scale, particularly in the unity factor, which is in line with the previous result I showed you. So as a summary and future work that we want to do, with this brief and pilot study, we can show that non-ordinary state of consciousness can be induced by VR technologies, particularly unity experience, the ego-dissolution, and the affective bliss. But of course, we need to improve the assessment methodology. It's so difficult to do research, as you may know, in this field about non-ordinary state of consciousness. So phenomenology is really important. So the inclusion, for example, of microphenomenological interviews or neurophenomenology is essential here. That's why we use these pictographic scales, trying to measure these ineffable experiences without the linguistic constraint. And also I want to highlight the novelty of Ripple as a collective experience, because there are many experiences in VR that are performed in an individual setting, but here we have a collective experience, and the rest of the group is very important for what happens. So we have two settings, as I told you before, the distributed or the collocated one, and we want to know if it's different to do this experience with people in the same room, with people you know from before, or depending on the previous relationship you have with the group. Also, we are interested on studying what are the variables that predict if people will be involved or not in this experience. With all the sessions we have done, we see some people that are really involved in the experience and is like the most powerful experience in their lives. And we have the completely other extreme, people that really not connect with the experience. So we think that are important variables here, for example, fear of compassion, fear of the invasion of the physical space because you merge with other, fear of body dissolution, for example, and attachment style are important variables to be measured. And also we want to explore the effects over time and, of course, what are the mechanisms of change, because we believe that this type of experience are very useful, for example, for clinical research. And I want to just finish saying thanks to, of course, the participants of this study. This is what we call the ripple effect. So usually after this experience, people hug each other. And also, as science is a team sport, I want to acknowledge my colleagues in Spain and in the US. And here you have some useful links if you want to know more about it. LabCitec, which is my lab in Valencia, the laboratory of David, which is the intangible realities laboratory, and Anuma, which is a company that is developing these experiences. And also, if you are interested on having, for example, this experience, you just need to have an Oculus Quest 2 headset and good internet connection, and then we can arrange a session for you to try. So that's all. Thank you for being here. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but if not, you can. Okay. And if not, you here have my email. Also, if you want to, for example, participate in this experience, you can write to me. Thank you.